Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Systeme.io podcast with me, Natasha Pinto. Join us as we discuss all things digital marketing and entrepreneurship. Here, online business owners take us on a journey, how they went from zero to launch. Today, our guest is Philip VanDusen. He is a creative entrepreneur, online business owner, YouTuber, and podcast host. And you're also the main man behind the Verhaal Brand Design and Consultancy. So I think our listeners will be really interested to know how you got started in this. So what got you started in marketing?
Well, the interesting thing is I'm actually trained as a painter. I have my master's in painting, and I started off as a college teacher in the fine arts, and it was a very difficult profession to make a living in. And I basically started, I had a teaching gig in the south of France, and I came back to the United States and started putting a bunch of monotype prints that I had done there on t-shirts and selling them in street fairs and to shops in New York City. And I realized that I really love seeing my work walking around on people's chests. And I kind of got sucked into the apparel industry. And after about a year, I am having a very difficult time kind of making the transition from being a fine artist to being a business person. I went to work for one of my competitors, about a $5 million t-shirt company in Brooklyn. And I very quickly went from a designer to a creative director because I realized that managing people in a design studio was a lot like teaching, except you made a lot more money and you weren't out of work every 9 months. And it was a really great experience. And I loved the apparel industry. I eventually went to work for Old Navy, which is a part of the Gap Incorporated. And I was with them for 11 years. I worked my way up to vice president of design there, overseeing, 65 people in 5 divisions. So it was like this huge kind of like rocket ride on an extremely successful global company. And then I made the jump over to the agency side and worked at a couple of different global branding agencies, working with huge companies, the Fortune 500, et cetera. And after about 7 years of doing that, I jumped back over to the client side and became the VP of design at Pepsi Co, and was overseeing global snacks for them, which was all those great for you foods like Doritos and Cheetos and Tostitos and all those things, which was super fun. And so I've kind of spent a 25 plus year career on the agency side and the client side. I've seen both sides of the street. And at my tail end of my work at PepsiCo, I'd really kind of started to burn out. And I decided to leave that role and start my own consultancy. So and one of the things I saw that the agency world was really moving towards, the age of the consultant, essentially. There were a lot of large, very small, but virtual agencies going on where you'd have a principal or two, and they'd bring in partners and build teams to work projects, but they could do it for cheaper and faster than global agencies and deliver the same kind of work. So when I went off on my own, I decided to kind of go that route. And so I started my own consultancy, and I work with a team of anywhere from 6 to 12 partners, depending on the project that we're on. And but that was the big shift, to go back to your question. That was the big tectonic shift, was going for working for the man for decades and having that steady paycheck, and then suddenly being on my own in my home office, totally by myself. And I had also, and this is, I think, germane for your listeners, is the fact that, I had been at a very senior level, very management position for a long period of time. And I had been very hands off to the day-to-day, like what you got to do to get the work out. And not only was I rusty on design and, Adobe and all the apps and stuff like that, but I knew nothing about email marketing. I knew nothing about building websites. I knew nothing about content marketing. I didn't know about social media marketing. I was a very senior older dude, and I knew nothing about surviving as a digital entrepreneur. And so I had to get up to speed like super quickly. And because, I needed to get some clients. And I was also planning on working with solopreneurs and small to medium-sized businesses, not the Fortune 500. So all of my contacts from my 25 years in the industry were of no use to me. So I didn't even have the network built to act as a sales funnel to bring in work to my agency at that point. So that for me was like this huge, leaping off point, into the abyss, which, put me at a position where I was starting from scratch, essentially. I mean, I had a lot of experience as a manager and a business leader and branding person and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of running a digital, a solopreneurial agency, I was naked. That's how I like to say it. I was like, I went out of the world and I was like totally naked, and I had to figure it out really quickly.
Okay, and how do you manage that? Because I think a lot of small business owners, they have been doing that for so long. They've been working for the man, they've been clocking their 9 to 5, and now they're taking this leap into, like you said, the unknown, completely naked with no idea how to do email marketing, any of these things. So how do you manage that kind of obstacle? Because it's a really big one right at the beginning of your journey as an entrepreneur, and it can be quite daunting. It can put people off of wanting to take that leap.
Yeah, it is. And because it is, there are so many facets of it. When you go off on your own, you have to suddenly realize that you are everything. The buck stops with you. You suddenly have to wear a whole lot of hats. You have to wear the finance hat. You have to wear the IT hat. You have to wear the business development hat, the client management hat. You have to deliver the product or service, whatever that is, production, everything. It's all you. And so for me, anyway, how I knew that I had to get up to speed really quickly. And so I joined a mastermind group. I joined a mastermind group run by, a fairly well-known kind of digital entrepreneur, and joined a community of about 300 or 400 people who were all digital entrepreneurs learning to build personal brands and, sell courses, do email marketing, all that sort of stuff. And so what I did was I joined that community and went in and said, hey, I will give you a brand audit for free. If, you can come to me, I'll tell you what I think of your social media channel, your website, or your brand design, and just to meet people. So I gave a lot of free value and consulting away for free at the very beginning. And what that did for me was I met a whole ton of people really quickly. They all felt very happy and beholden to me because I'd given them so much value for free. But then I also made some really, really deep, great friendships and connections with people from a whole range of skill sets, from email marketing, Facebook advertising, video development and editing, YouTube channel experts. And so I completely immersed myself and surrounded myself with people who knew more than me. And even though I was a gray hair at the moment, by that time, I was like, you have to act like a newbie. You have to be teachable. You can't go in there acting like you know everything. And I knew I didn't know anything. So I was like, I came in there and said, hey, I know nothing. You guys teach me. This is my skill set. This is the value I can give you. But this is all the stuff that I don't know. And so that was really, really helpful. And I was a member of that community for 2 years, and started my newsletter at that point. I started my YouTube channel about 6 months later. I started getting active on social media. I started my email list, all of those sorts of things I did within that mastermind community. And so I'm super passionate about the power of mastermind groups. And that's why I also run my own communities. I have a free Facebook group called Brand Design Masters. And I also am developing a membership group that will be of the same name. And I run paid mastermind groups where I lead a group of people who are doing that same thing. They're developing and growing their businesses, but they're doing it with partnership and building relationships and networking with other people. So I am a firm believer in the fact that you can't do it by yourself. You really, if you want to, add rocket fuel to your growth, you really have to surround yourself with people who know more than you do.
Okay, fantastic advice. And then can you give us your definition of brand identity and why it's so important?
Brand identity is how people recognize it's you. That's really what it comes down to. You have to be, I like to kind of talk about that paradigm in the terms of what I call the 3 R's, which is you need to be recognized, you need to be remembered, and you need to be revered. Being recognized is where design comes in. It's like whenever people come across you on social, on your website, some piece of content that you did, some email that you send out, every time they come across you, there has to be a level of design that's discernible, color, font, some sort of treatment, logo, and it has to be incredibly consistent across every single place that they find you, because that's how they remember you. You don't want this huge range of disparate design things going on, because if people come across you on LinkedIn on a post, and then through an email, and then on some social thing, or on your YouTube channel, and everything looks different, they don't know that it's you immediately. And so making sure that people recognize it's you when they come across you is job number one. And one of the biggest mistakes that designers make, or not designers, or entrepreneurs, kind of solopreneurs make when they go out, is they'll buy a logo on Fiverr and they'll just throw it up on their website, and then they'll develop a social media channel 3 months later, and they choose some colors and they do some design stuff over there. And then they'll go over on Facebook and they'll start a Facebook group, and then they'll do some design stuff and some fonts and some colors over there. And then before you know it, a year later, they have this rat's nest of disparate design elements, colors, and things going on that they then have to go back and clean up. And so while they think they saved a lot of money by buying a logo for $20 on Fiverr, they actually dug themselves into a very deep hole that's going to be very expensive and time consuming to get themselves out of. And so also because this is my business, and I see this day in and day out, companies that have grown to, 500, $1 million, $10 million a year, who have this, they need to herd their cats. Their cats are all over the range, and they've made a big mess for themselves, and their business has taken off, and they are now sacrificing brand equity and recognition because they didn't get their act together in the beginning. And so I'm a huge proponent of people saying, hey, spend what you can afford, but invest in your brand design, because establishing that at the very beginning will save you so much more money, and it will also gain you so much more recognition from the very beginning, that you're not going to sacrifice all that work you do at the beginning down the road by having to go back and clean everything up. So brand design essentially is, developing a digital visible design ecosystem of elements, a logo, of font choices, color, a pattern or a texture, possibly even a sound, a photography style, an illustration style, and creating a suite of visual elements that you will use consistently across everything that you do.
Okay, and then to take that one step further, what about brand voice? And then how, as a new business owner, when you're still so busy focusing on finding your feet, how do you establish that brand voice?
I think that especially with solopreneurs and people who are just starting off, is be you, be authentically you, because people can copy what you do, the products and services you offer. They can copy your social media, they can copy your content, but what they can't copy is you. They can't copy your personality. So if you are very authentic to your personality going into it, number one, you don't have to fake it ever. You don't have to worry about being consistent, because you're just going to be you. And you are creating a unique voice for yourself, because no one can be you. And the one thing that I coach a lot of entrepreneurs and digital content producers too. And one of the things that I tell them is that, people can copy everything that you do, but if you get out there and be authentic and show people what's behind the curtain and exude your personality, there's going to be 10, let's say there's 10 people who do what you do. There's 10 YouTube video experts who do branding. All right. And someone wants to learn that skill. There's me, there's Jacob Cass, there's Roberto Blake, there's Chris Doe, there's, Chris Ducker, there's all these other experts out there, but we all have our own personalities. And some people like my personality better than somebody else's, and they want to learn from me. A lot of times the connection is made through a personality level or a comfort level of someone's vibe. And so I really feel like, as you're getting out there and starting to, express your voice, the more you are, the more likely you are to not be repeatable. If you go out into the world trying to act like somebody else, then you are then in competition with them. You're in direct competition with them because you're trying to mirror them. what I say to do is go out there and be yourself, be your own personality, because somewhere out there is someone who wants to learn or do business with you because they like you and they trust you. And if we get into a YouTube conversation, I'll talk about like why YouTube is so great for that in terms of getting clients.
Okay, perfect. And then, so there's a quite common statistic that goes around in terms of brand and impressions. So it's that 5 to 7 impressions for someone to remember a brand. Now, how do you go about making that impression? Because it's not just what your website looks like, what they see on social media. How do you go about making and maintaining that impression and keeping that brand identity that we've spoken about?
Well, first of all, people have to see you.
Yeah.
So it's visibility, number one. And because when I coach entrepreneurs who are just starting off, the one thing I say to do is don't try to be everywhere all the time, especially at the beginning. Choose one social channel and go deep and hard on it. Because if you try to be everywhere, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you try to be everywhere all the time. Number one, it's way too much time and energy because producing content or social posts is time consuming. The other thing is that your exposure or chance of showing up in the feed when someone happens to be going through it is less because your volume of posts will be less across all of those channels. If you show up very deeply on one channel, you're going to post more frequently. Chances are you're going to be seen quicker or more frequently there. So the person who's on that platform, your prospective target, they are going to their chances of being exposed multiple times to that impression of you are greater. So number one, choose a platform, go deep on it, and post as frequently as possible. Number two is kind of what I said before, which is make sure that your design is very clear, striking, differentiated, and legible. One of the things that is kind of this drum that I beat a lot is that 50% of web traffic happens on the phone, right? Which means 50% of your impressions are going to happen on a device that's 3 inches by 5 inches long. And so the chances are your artwork, your thumbnails, whatever it is that you post is going to be about 3/4 of an inch by an inch. That's how people are going to see it. And if you go using 14-point type and having, 200 words on a social post, it's not going to show up. People aren't going to be able to read it. So you have to super think about scale. And that's another thing when people do logos, they don't think about scale. They don't think about the chances are 50% of the time people see their logo, it's going to be on a web page that's going to be on a phone, which means it's going to be about 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. So you have to really think about simplicity and legibility when it comes to your branding, your thumbnails, your fonts, all your communication, your color choices in order to make that impression. For instance, let's just segue into the YouTube conversation.
Sure.
If you're going on YouTube and you're starting to publish videos, people are scrolling through their YouTube feed on their phone and there's thumbnails going by super fast, right? What do I want to watch? And if they come across one of your thumbnails and they go, oh, that's Philip. I remember his video from before. If I change my thumbnail color and design style and logo and layout every single time I post a video, the chances of someone recognizing that video as mine go down. So the more consistency you establish in how you lay out and how you design your thumbnails or your social posts, your Instagram posts, whatever that is, the greater chance people have of recognizing that it's you. And at the beginning, it's all about the first R, recognized.
And how do you take it to that next R? How do you make yourself a little bit more remarkable?
Well, you have to stand for something. And I think that means not just in design. You have to establish a point of view in design. And that's the hardest thing for a lot of people to do at the beginning, to say, okay, I'm going to choose chartreuse, my brand color, right? Or blue or red or purple as my brand color. I'm going to use that color forever, at least for the next 5 years on absolutely everything that I do. This logo, absolutely everything I do, this font on everything I do. You cannot bounce around. Making that kind of a commitment is like getting married. It's freaky. It's scary. A lot of people don't like to do it. But if you want to make that impression, if you want to be remembered, you've got to make a commitment to a particular brand look and feel. Number one. Number two, you have to stand for something. We are in a sea of noise, right? It is a very, very loud environment out there. There's a reason why people use clickbaity titles. It's because it cuts through the noise. Yes, it's cheesy. Yes, it's obnoxious. But when it comes right down to it, our whole goal as digital entrepreneurs is to stop the thumb. We want to stop the thumb scrolling. And the only way that you can really do that is to take a stand. You have to believe in something, and you have to come out of the gate and have a point of view. If you post a lot of content, or any kind of post for that matter, and you agree with everybody, or you take a really easy perspective, or you try not to piss anybody off, or you just agree with popular sentiment, the thumb doesn't stop scrolling, right? You have to have a point of view. You have to take a perspective. You have to kind of have an opinion, because there are going to be people who vehemently disagree with you. There are going to be people who absolutely love your point of view, and suddenly you are their tribe. But that's what you have to do, because you have to separate the looky-loos from the people who are going to be your passionate brand advocates. And that is in everything. That's from the products that you develop, the services you develop, the sort of content you develop, how you write, your tone of voice, the subjects that you do content on. If you do content, you really have to shine. You have to kind of like be remarkable. You have to be rememberable, because the less guts you have, the more you're going to fade off into the noise.
So it's more than just that, like, consistency is key. It's be consistent, but like be consistently, this is your stance. This is what you have chosen. Make that solid decision, make that statement, and stick to it.
Well, and one of the things that's dangerous about that, I'm not going to say dangerous, I'm going to say scary, which is what keeps people from starting, is they worry that someone's going to flame them. Someone's going to say, you suck. Someone's going to say that opinion's BS.
Yeah, cancel.
And it hurts, it really does hurt. I mean, I've had probably 20,000 comments on my YouTube videos. I can distinctly remember like the 3 or 4 people who like really came out and flamed me. And you have to develop a little bit of a thick skin. And that's hard to do at the beginning, because you feel very exposed. You feel like everyone is going to judge you. But the beautiful thing about it when you're just starting off is that no one's there. That's the great thing, is that you're talking to an empty room.
Yeah.
And so you're free to make all the mistakes and, screw up and stumble and have a bad point of view and do bad editing or whatever, because no one's there. You're just going to build an audience. So just starting, getting out there, making mistakes is the only way to do it. For all of the content creators out there that you admire or that you think are fantastic or you want to emulate, there are 200 out there who were stopped at the door because they were intimidated by feeling like people were looking at them.
Okay. It's a difficult thing for lots of people to get over, that kind of stage fright, even though it's not really a stage.
Yeah, it's a stage. I'm not gonna lie. It's a stage. You are putting yourself out there.
Yeah, and it's permanent, I think, or a little bit more permanent than being just on a stage for like a 30-minute performance. This is
true. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, and that's one of the things that I've done and I do this on purpose. One of the people who I really is a good friend of mine, Roberto Blake, who's got 3,000 videos up on YouTube now. Very talented, super nice guy. He's been on my show, and he's kept all of his videos from the very beginning on his channel. Number one, because it's monetized, he makes money on them, but he's got videos like when he was just starting off on YouTube, where he's like sitting in a dark New York apartment on a futon with like, single light bulb lighting and doing it on his phone, and just like absolutely horrific, production quality. But he's kept it up there. And when I started YouTube, I started at his first video and went through as I kind of scanned through his videos. And I was like, man, if he can do that, if he can post that, and I can get value out of something like that, then I can do it, And so I've kept all my videos up there. The very first videos that I've done, that where I was like, my mouth's dry and like I'm stuttering and I'm like really nervous, and I'm just like, you can tell how tense I am. I just keep them up there because there's somebody out there who's just thinking about starting YouTube who needs to see that. They need to see how crappy I was. and I like to share that authenticity, that I started somewhere. I posted my first video. I may have 250,000 subscribers now, but I posted a video once when I had 10 subscribers, and I looked terrible and I was nervous. But everyone's got to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere.
And I think that authenticity is also what draws a lot of people in, because there's all this, oh, look at my fancy car, look at my fancy house.
Oh yeah.
YouTube channel, when actually they also started somewhere. And then to kind of segue into that comparison. So you said you started as a fine arts teacher, lecturer at university. So could you give us like a ballpark figure of how you were doing then versus how you were doing now? Because I know for a lot of people that like steady, stable income is quite difficult to let go of, even if it is in a job that they don't necessarily love, to what you do now and how much more time you have on your hands as well.
That is such a trick question. Boy. Well, I'll tell you a story. When I had just come out of teaching, I was living with my girlfriend in New York, and I needed to get a job. And she said, I know people who are graphic designers, and you can make $50,000 a year as a graphic designer. And I was like, what? No way. There's no way I would ever make $50,000 a year. Cause I just come off a teaching gig where I made like, I don't know, $25,000 or something like that in France, for that matter. Really sweet, romantic job, And I was like, you are absolutely crazy. There's no way I'm going to make $50,000 a year. Within a year and a half, I was making $75,000 a year as a graphic designer. And sometimes you just have to challenge your perceptions. And, I've, like I said, I've been a VP at design in major corporations, making multiple six figures plus stock options, plus all that stuff. I've gotten all the cash and prizes, right? Worked my way up through that. When I went off and did my own agency, I took a serious pay cut for a number of years. And I can't say that I'm even making what I was making when I left being a VP of design at a major corporation, but I own it. That's the big difference. I own my brand. No one can lay me off. No financial downturn, no corporate restructuring will land me on the street without a job or a business card. I have built my own brand, my own equity, my own ecosystem of content and community. And that is the big difference. So I make multiple six figures now. It's great. I feel very comfortable. I can't say that I have more time, because I certainly don't. I probably have less time, but that's because I'm super passionate about it. Like, I can't wait to get into the office in the morning. I can't wait to develop new content or write a new email or develop a new course or work with a new coaching client. I mean, I love what I do now because I am helping a huge community of people who desperately need what I know. And that is what gets me up in the morning. And I am having more fun now. I tell this to my wife all the time. I'm having more fun now doing what I'm doing than I did in the previous 20 years of my career, because I'm working with creative professionals who I know, like, and trust and can help. I'm working with clients who can deeply benefit from what I bring to the table for them. And at this point in my career, it's not all about the money. Like I said, I worked my way up to the top, corporate jets around the world, whole deal. It's great. But when it comes down to it, there comes a point in your life where you really want to give back. And so I'm giving back, but it's also rewarding me in terms of my business because I'm giving good stuff back.
Yeah, and it's something that it's yours, it's your baby, it's your name at the bottom of everything. I think there's something to be said for that as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm
Well, and
sure.
especially if you've been laid off. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been laid off 5 times in my career.
Oh
I
wow.
mean, don't get me wrong. I was laid off after 11 years at a corporate gig because of a corporate restructuring. So consultants came in, they moved departments around, VPs left, presidents left, and then they're like, oh, let's get rid of this group of vice presidents because they cost too much money. And suddenly I was on the street. Same thing happened in the downturn of the dot-com industry. Same thing happened in the downturn of the real estate bubble. And so I found myself multiple times on the street by no fault of my own. And that happens to everybody in their career. And if you think it's not going to happen to you, you are wrong. And so you have to really kind of prepare for that. You have to start to build your own real estate. You have to start to build your own ecosystem, because eventually, at some point in your life, you will find yourself without a full-time paycheck, without a name on that business card or that LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And you're going to be kind of trying to figure it out.
Yeah, without a paddle. Okay. And then it's quite
Without
a
a paddle. Yeah. But then what you do is you go find a whole bunch of people who know how to canoe. You
yeah.
find people who got paddles and you go hang out with them.
Yeah, and
And you
you learn how
say,
to build your own
you
canoe
learn,
and your own
you
paddle.
know how to, yeah, you learn how to paddle your canoe.
All right, brilliant. And then when you're working with a new client, is there a particular, like a question or a series of questions that you ask to kind of get a feel of their brand? So say someone has expressed interest in having you as their consultant, they need help, they're small and they're looking to scale. How do you work with them? What do you do?
Well, there are kind of two. I'm teaching a class right now called Brand Strategy 101, and that is it takes people through the entire process from the first connection with a client through the first layers of conversation, stakeholder interviews, all that sort of stuff, as you work with clients and develop strategy and design for them. There are kind of two main conversations, three really, that happen with a client. One is the qualification call. That's the most important one, where you find out whether they have the money, whether they value what you do, and whether they have enough to pay you for what you do. And that's just a kind of separating the wheat from the chaff kind of conversation, right? You give them a broad view of what you do, what it generally costs, huge range. And they go, oh, I can get there for $5 on Fiverr. And then you go, great, go get it on $5 on Fiverr, and you hang up the phone. Or they say, yeah, that sounds about right. And then you go, okay, we can talk. The next conversation is a discovery call, where you really dig in, and this is a 45 to an hour call where you're asking them a whole range of questions about their business, everything from their brand strategy, their customer avatar, their actual workings of the business, the finance, the revenue, products and services, where their digital footprint is, where they get their revenue, where's it come from, physical retail, digital, service businesses. I have a discovery call questionnaire that's literally 4 pages long of questions that you ask, and I can't run through them all.
Yeah.
But essentially that's what you do. You dig deeply into what makes a client's business tick. And what that exposes is, number one, is what they came to you for actually what they need? A lot of times clients come to you and they say, I need a new website. When actually, after you question them and really dig into it, you realize they don't need a new website. What they need is a customer journey on their website, or new copywriting, or they need a better sales funnel, or they need a better content, better paid promotional advertising driving people to the website, or they need a clearer call to action on their website. So as you dig in, you become a bit of a detective. You have to take on the role of being a detective to ask deep questions, get the answers, and then ascertain what the client actually needs and build them something that's actually going to get them the results that they want. So that's a discovery call. You have that call. But then once you get engaged, I always do stakeholder interviews where I interview multiple people in the company and ask them a series of questions around the brand voice, brand design, competitive set, customer avatars, all that sort of stuff. It then exposes how much the brand actually knows itself and how much people inside of the company know the brand. And so that's kind of the three major conversations you have going into a meeting, but that's kind of how it works.
Do you find that there are a lot of stakeholders within the brands that aren't necessarily on the same page with brand voice and that kind of thing? Is that a common?
Yeah, it's happens much more frequently than you would think. And that's a great opportunity to figure it out for them and to do additional work for them. The more you can expose inconsistencies within the organization, the more a company will sit up straight and pay attention to what you're saying. Because most companies know that if you have stakeholders within the organization that are marching to different drummers or have different priorities or are going about things in different ways from each other, it's wasting resources and it's wasting power and energy of the company to move forward. So having those conversations and really digging in and finding out where there are inconsistencies or lack of knowledge or blind spots is really important. And as a branding consultant, that's my job, is to find those things. I mean, I did a strategy brainstorming session with a client about 2 years ago where I was in their corporate offices and I was in the room with the CMO, the CFO, the CEO, the head of operations, head of production. And we were developing a brand positioning statement. And in the brand positioning statement, you talk about who you are, what you offer, who you offer it to, why you're better, why you're different. It's in a single statement, and it's a very wordsmithy kind of workshopy activity. But when we were working, I was asking these C-suite level executives, what is it that your company does? If you had to phrase the one thing that your company does in like 7 words, what would it be? And the CEO and the COO of this company could not agree with what their company did. And I thought, this is a problem. and so we hammered it out. We got in there and it's, you act like a referee and a
mediator,
a slave driver and a mediator, and a babysitter and a troublemaker. And that's what I love about what I do, is because you're really getting in there and you're like working with the clay and you're trying to take stakeholders and get them aligned around a particular goal. And when you do, it's such a beautiful thing because you just see the clarity and the energy come back into the company.
Amazing. And then sort of a question for YouTube, but so there's this preference for video content that is widespread across all the platforms, but does this match every brand, and how can you tailor adding more video content to different business models and different niches? Because while it's like super appropriate for some, it's difficult for others to get into this.
Yeah, and the audience for video is different. There are demographics that are very clear around video content. Video content and its attractiveness trends young. And I'll give you a very personal example of this. My YouTube channel, and through my analytics, I know that the majority of my YouTube viewers are anywhere from 24 to 35 years old. When I did a survey of my email list and my newsletter audience, my engaged newsletter audience is generally from 35 to 55 years old. So my reading audience and my video audience are almost totally different in terms of age category. And for many businesses, that's the case. There are, YouTube is a young channel. Vimeo is slightly more because it's not really a cruising through kind of, search engine-y kind of platform. It's more of a house of video. And, LinkedIn is now putting its back into video and creative content production and video. And there's, LinkedIn Live now, and there's all sorts they're prioritizing video in their feeds. And so there's a lot of different channels for video, and every different channel needs video in a slightly different way. Like YouTube, you really got to be kind of clickbaity to cut through the noise. LinkedIn, you have to really kind of be delivering some ROI on the 5 minutes of investment that someone's giving to watch the video in their LinkedIn feed, because they're on LinkedIn for business. They're on LinkedIn for networking and to get answers about their business. YouTube, they're there for entertainment, and so different platforms ask for different things. And so you have to really align your brand, understand your audience, and understand the audience on the particular platform to be on the right platform, deliver the right kind of content for your audience, and to be able to resonate with them there. And there are now so many different platforms that feature video. You have to go into that. You have to experiment. Number one, you have to go in and try a bunch of stuff, see what works, but then pay really close attention to your analytics to understand where you're getting traction, and then adjust your efforts to follow the traction. And that's a process that a lot of people don't know needs to happen, and they don't really know how to approach it. To make that a process at the beginning as you're developing content, to say, okay, what's our content, what's our video content plan? What are our subjects going to be? What are our subjects going to be on which platform? How often are we going to post? How often are we going to look at our analytics? What kind of return on investment do we want to get? What's our call to action? Do we want people to go to our website, fill out our contact form, subscribe to our newsletter, go to our digital conference, buy our webinar? What is it that we want people to do? And so developing a content marketing plan, which includes the content itself, the platform, the call to action, the ROI, and the tracking analytics of it, that for companies, is one of those things that they really have to kind of get buttoned up and hire sometimes subject matter experts to help them walk them through it. Because the worst thing that you see is when a company has been for years putting time and energy into a channel that is not returning for them. It's not driving traffic. It's not getting the result that they want, but they haven't realized that there's a different channel or a different form of content that could drive those results that they want. They haven't experimented enough to know what it is.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot of experimentation that needs to take place before you start putting all that content out there, so that you can kind of direct it to the right channel and in the right way. Right. And then what does the future of your consultancy look like? Do you have any medium-term or long-term goals that you're looking towards?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been making a pretty big pivot in the last 2 years. I've been kind of compartmentalizing my client work, so to speak, and I've been expanding the work and the interaction that I'm having with my community that I've built. So in the last year, I launched the Brand Design Masters Guild, which is a paid mastermind community, runs for 12 weeks, and it's 10 people for a 12-week experience. Very intense, very amazing. And the response on it has been incredible. I just launched Brand Strategy 101 in January of this year, which is my signature brand strategy introduction to brand strategy course. I'm now giving that course for the second time for the second half of the year. I am working on launching a community, a private community for creative professionals. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to happen. It may be the beginning of next year, mid next year. And I'm going to be developing a new course that surrounds LinkedIn soon. So I'm really pivoting my attention more towards providing value directly to my community than working so much on delivering brand identity and websites and client work. I am doing a lot more retainer level consulting with clients rather than delivering creative product, but that's kind of been the evolution of my business. But that's also because I've been in business for 25 plus years, and that's how it's starting to evolve.
Okay. And then in closing, some shorter questions. So is there one book or podcast or resource that you would recommend to our listeners? So someone just starting out.
Yeah. Wow. I have a lot of, and this book, there's a couple different books. One of my favorite books is a book. It's not a design book. It's not a business book, but it's a book that's been translated into more than 50 languages. And it's a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And it's one of those books that's probably had more influence on my life than almost anything else. And The Power of Now is about how you think and how your mind works. There's a lot of anxiety in the world today. I mean, not just COVID, but the changing of our economy and the pressures of, the global business in general. and just culture. I think there's a higher level of pressure and fear that's going on around the world. And so being able to keep track of and channel your thoughts in a productive way and not be eaten by that anxiety, whether that's anxiety of the past and things you've done in the past or worry about the future. Eckhart Tolle's book is about about the process of keeping your thoughts in the present. Sounds like an incredibly simple topic, but it wouldn't have been produced in 50 languages and be in like its 10th printing if it wasn't absolutely amazing. So Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Okay, fantastic. And then is there any advice that you would give to your 18-year-old self looking back?
Wow. Wear earplugs when you're in clubs. Yeah, no, there's a lot of advice. I mean, the funny thing is, I came across a list of I've kept journals my whole life. It's one of the ways I kind of process my thoughts and emotions and stuff. And I opened up a journal from like my mid-20s a while back, and I was looking, and I made a list on one page about stuff that I wanted. And it was mostly material things, but there were also a lot of things in terms of like job and creativity and things like that. And I realized that I had vastly out-achieved every dream that I had when I was 24. And that made me incredibly happy. And so I think that, happiness in life is setting stretch goals for yourself. And then when you achieve them, set more stretch goals, because it's about the journey. It's not about the cash and prizes. It's not about the destination. Life is not a destination. The other thing I would say is that to my 18-year-old self is that life goes by really fast, like really fast. It may sound crazy when you're in your 20s or 30s that life goes by fast, but let me tell you, when you hit 50, you're going to wake up and you're going to say, holy F, that was a trip. And I would have done X, or maybe I should have pivoted here, or, there's a lot of shoulds that you'll lay on yourself. But if you just come into life and expect it, that it's going to be going by really fast, and you just want to make as much out of every moment and every decision, every relationship that you have, you're going to end up on the tail end of that in a better place.
Okay. And then finally, where can our listeners find you? So I'll put your tags in all of the episode notes.
Sure. VanDusen.com is my agency website, and also all my personal brand stuff is there. You can get to any place in my brand ecosystem from that website, VanDusen.com. I have a private Facebook group called Brand Design Masters. If you go to facebook.com/groups/brand design masters, you have to answer a few questions and cough up your email address, because there is a price to entry. And you'll get into a group of some amazing creative professionals and entrepreneurs who are networking and sharing resources and ideas and their work for feedback and stuff. It's really great group. I also go live in there a lot more than I do on YouTube. And so if you want to interact with me more directly, catch me over there. And also my YouTube channel, which is under my name, Philip VanDusen. Great way to connect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Philip, for joining us and for giving us your time. And thank you to our listeners today. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, subscribe to the Systeme podcast so that you never miss an episode. Systeme.io is a digital marketing software platform packed with all the tools you need to grow your online business.